Hollywood in 1964 looked unstoppable. Giant sets, legendary stars, studios spending money like the box office could never betray them. But what happens when that illusion collapses? Behind the glamorous premieres were films that lost fortunes, embarrassed studios, and nearly ended entire careers. Today, we're uncovering the 13 worst box office disasters of 1964, including one epic so expensive its failure helped kill an entire genre, The Carpetbaggers, 1964. On paper, The Carpetbaggers looked like the kind of scandal-soaked drama audiences would devour. The film followed the ruthless rise of a fictional aviation tycoon whose ambition destroyed friendships, romances, and entire companies. Inspired loosely by real Hollywood figures, the story promised controversy, glamour, and a peek into the darker corners of American success. The production arrived with enormous publicity. Studios believed the film's provocative tone and headline-grabbing subject matter would draw curious crowds. Yet the gamble proved risky. While the movie earned attention, critics largely attacked its sensational style and uneven storytelling. Many reviewers dismissed it as flashy exploitation rather than meaningful drama. The film's marketing leaned heavily on scandal, but audiences expecting a gripping character study instead found a sprawling narrative filled with abrupt shifts in tone. The story jumped from aviation to romance to personal rivalry, often struggling to keep its focus. Financially, the results were disappointing compared to the film's massive promotional push. What was intended to become a prestige drama instead became an example of how controversy alone could not guarantee success. In the glamorous world of 1964 Hollywood, spectacle still mattered, but storytelling mattered even more. Circus World, 1964. Few productions of 1964 attempted spectacle on the scale of Circus World. Starring John Wayne and Rita Hayworth, the film promised audiences a sweeping adventure set within the colorful yet dangerous world of traveling circuses. The studio spared little expense recreating massive circus performances on screen. Enormous tents, elaborate stunt sequences, and large crowds of performers filled the frame. Filmed largely in Spain, the production built entire circus environments designed to feel authentic and grand. But spectacle alone could not carry the story. The narrative followed a circus owner attempting to rebuild his traveling show while confronting a painful family past involving his estranged daughter. Instead of the thrilling circus drama audiences expected, the film often slowed into emotional conflicts and melodrama. Critics quickly pointed out the imbalance. Reviews praised the scale of the production, but questioned the pacing and narrative focus. The film's length and shifting tone left some viewers disengaged. For the studio, the disappointment was financial as well as critical. With a large international production budget and heavy promotion, Circus World needed strong box office returns to succeed. Instead, it became another reminder that even impressive spectacle could struggle if audiences failed to connect with the story. So, the Yellow Rolls-Royce, 1964. Few things signaled luxury more clearly than the famous automobile at the center of the Yellow Rolls-Royce. The film followed the journey of one elegant car as it passed through the lives of several wealthy owners across Europe. Each segment featured different characters and different settings, from aristocratic British estates to glamorous continental resorts. The studio assembled an impressive cast and filmed in beautiful international locations, hoping the film's elegance and star power would draw audiences. Yet the very structure meant to make the film unique also created a problem. Instead of following a single story, the narrative unfolded as an anthology. Each new owner brought a new storyline, a new set of characters, and a new emotional tone. Some viewers found the shifting structure fascinating. Others struggled to connect with characters who disappeared just as their stories became interesting. Critics praised the film's production value and polished visuals, but questioned whether the disconnected stories diluted the emotional impact. With a sizable budget and heavy international promotion, expectations were high. When ticket sales failed to match the film's glamorous presentation, the disappointment was clear. In 1964, the Yellow Rolls-Royce became a reminder that star power and luxury imagery could not always guarantee audience engagement. The Outrage, 1964. Something unusual for a Western 1964. Rather than focusing on shootouts or frontier adventure, the film explored the unreliable nature of truth. And the story followed a violent incident in the desert involving a bandit, a woman, and her husband. When the crime was investigated, each witness offered a completely different version of what happened. Every testimony contradicted the others. This narrative structure was inspired by the groundbreaking Japanese film Rashomon. Hollywood hoped the same psychological mystery could work within a Western setting. But the experiment confused many viewers. Audiences expecting a traditional Western instead encountered a philosophical puzzle about perception and truth. Instead of clear heroes and villains, the story presented conflicting perspectives that never fully resolved. While some critics admired the film's ambition, others felt the structure created emotional distance. Without a clear version of events, the audiences struggled to attach themselves to the characters. At the box office, curiosity did not translate into strong ticket sales. For studios accustomed to reliable Western hits, the film's financial disappointment showed how risky experimental storytelling could be, even when backed by familiar genres. The Chalk Garden, 1964. Compared to the spectacle films of 1964, The Chalk Garden arrived with a quieter kind of drama. Based on the stage play by Enid Bagnold, the story unfolded within a coastal English home filled with emotional tension and unspoken secrets. The narrative centered on a troubled teenage girl living with her grandmother and the mysterious governess hired to guide her. As the governess slowly gained the girl's trust, hidden past events began to surface. And unlike the larger-than-life productions dominating theaters, the film relied heavily on dialogue, character psychology, and subtle performances. Critics often praised the acting and the film's thoughtful atmosphere. But the same qualities that impressed reviewers limited its commercial reach. The film moved slowly, focusing on emotional complexity rather than dramatic action. For general audiences seeking excitement or spectacle, the experience felt restrained. Marketing the film also proved difficult. It was neither a traditional romance nor a thriller, and its stage-inspired storytelling appealed primarily to viewers who enjoyed character-driven drama. While The Chalk Garden earned respect from critics, the box office told a different story. In a year filled with ambitious productions, and this thoughtful drama quietly faded from theaters without the audience the studio had hoped for. The Night of the Iguana, 1964. Few films released in 1964 carried the emotional weight of The Night of the Iguana. Adapted from Tennessee Williams's celebrated stage play, the story unfolds at a remote Mexican coastal hotel where a group of troubled strangers find themselves confronting their pasts. At the center is a defrocked minister struggling with faith, guilt, and personal failure. Around him gather several equally restless souls, each dealing with loneliness, regret, or lost purpose. Critics praised the film's powerful performances and the boldness of Williams's psychologically rich writing. Yet the very elements that made the film artistically respected also limited its mainstream appeal. Rather than offering simple entertainment, the story explored spiritual crisis and emotional breakdown. Its slow pacing and intense dialogue demanded patience from viewers. While admired by critics and serious film audiences, The Night of the Iguana struggled to reach the wide commercial success studios hoped for. The Americanization of Emily, 1964. War films in 1964 usually celebrated bravery, sacrifice, and heroic triumph. The Americanization of Emily approached the subject from a far more skeptical perspective. The story follows a cynical American naval officer stationed in London during World War II. Instead of glorifying combat, he openly questions the romantic myths surrounding heroism and wartime sacrifice. This sharp, satirical viewpoint fascinated critics. Many praised the film's intelligent script and its willingness to challenge traditional wartime storytelling. Yet the film's unusual tone made it difficult to categorize. It blended romance, dark comedy, and anti-war commentary in ways that confused audiences expecting something more conventional. Marketing struggled to define the film clearly, leaving potential viewers unsure what kind of story they would experience. Despite its thoughtful themes and strong dialogue, the Americanization of Emily ultimately found a smaller audience than its creators hoped. Kitten with a Whip, 1964. In 1964, some studios attempted to attract audiences with controversial stories that promised shock and tension. Kitten with a Whip was one of those bold experiments. The film centers on a troubled young woman who unexpectedly enters the home of a political candidate. What begins as an uncomfortable encounter gradually spirals into manipulation, psychological pressure, and escalating conflict. Anne Margaret's intense performance drew significant attention, and the marketing campaign highlighted the film's rebellious tone and provocative themes. However, controversy alone rarely guarantees success. Critics often described the story as sensational and uneven rather than genuinely suspenseful. While some viewers were intrigued by its daring subject matter, others felt the film relied too heavily on melodrama. Despite strong publicity and high expectations, the movie struggled to translate curiosity into sustained box office momentum, becoming another mixed gamble for studios in 1964. Story: Rio Conchos, 1964. By 1964, Westerns were still considered one of Hollywood's safest bets. Audiences had spent decades watching rugged heroes ride across desert landscapes, confronting danger and defending frontier justice. Rio Conchos attempted to capture that familiar excitement while adding the urgency of a military mission. The story followed a tense expedition into hostile territory where a small group of soldiers and outlaws were forced to cooperate. Their mission was simple but dangerous: recover stolen weapons before they could spark a wider conflict along the frontier. Suspicion lingered within the group, and every mile through the desert increased the risk of betrayal. The ingredients seemed promising. Action, conflict, and sweeping landscapes had defined successful Westerns for years. Yet by the mid-1960s, audiences were beginning to grow weary of familiar formulas. Critics described Rio Conchos as solid but forgettable. Without a truly distinctive story or iconic characters, the film struggled to stand apart from the many frontier adventures already competing for attention in theaters and on television. Robin and the Seven Hoods, 1964. Few groups in Hollywood symbolized effortless cool like the Rat Pack. When Frank Sinatra and his circle appeared on screen together, audiences expected sharp humor, smooth musical numbers, and relaxed charisma. Robin and the Seven Hoods tried to capture that magic while reinventing the Robin Hood legend in an unusual setting. Instead of medieval forests, the story unfolded in the gangland streets of 1920s Chicago. Sinatra played a gangster who redistributed stolen money to struggling neighborhoods, creating a criminal twist on the classic tale of robbing the rich to help the poor. The concept allowed the film to combine gangster comedy with musical spectacle. Colorful song and dance sequences appeared alongside rival mobsters and shifting loyalties, yet the blend proved uneven. Production changes and creative adjustments complicated the film's tone. Critics often noted that the movie seemed unsure whether it wanted to be a musical, a crime comedy, or a Rat Pack showcase. Despite its famous cast and energetic moments, audiences expecting a smoother comedy sometimes felt confused by the shifting style. The Visit, 1964. Few films of 1964 explored revenge with the icy precision of The Visit. When the story centered on a wealthy woman returning to the small town that had once rejected her in disgrace. Years earlier, she had been humiliated and driven away. Now she returned as one of the richest people in the world. The town, struggling financially, welcomed her with excitement, until she revealed the true reason for her visit. She offered the community a fortune beyond imagination, but her generosity came with a disturbing condition. The townspeople must deliver justice against the man she believed had destroyed her life. What followed was a slow moral unraveling. One by one, ordinary citizens began to weigh the value of wealth against their sense of conscience. Critics praised the film's chilling exploration of collective guilt and moral compromise, yet its somber tone made it difficult to market as traditional entertainment. Rather than offering adventure or romance, the story forced audiences to confront unsettling ethical questions. As a result, despite strong performances and powerful themes, the film struggled to attract the wide audiences its studio had hoped for. The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964. In the early 1960s, Hollywood still believed audiences would always flock to massive historical epics. Few productions embodied that confidence more dramatically than The Fall of the Roman Empire. The film attempted to recreate ancient Rome with astonishing scale. Gigantic sets were constructed in Spain, including a massive replica of the Roman Forum. Thousands of extras filled the scenes, portraying soldiers, citizens, and senators. And the story focused on political intrigue and the struggle for power during one of Rome's most turbulent periods. With elaborate costumes, sweeping battle sequences, and grand speeches, the production aimed to rival earlier epic successes. But audiences were changing. By 1964, many moviegoers were beginning to prefer faster-paced stories and more contemporary themes. Despite its breathtaking scale, the film struggled to maintain excitement across its lengthy runtime. Critics often praised the visuals while noting the slow pacing and complex narrative. The financial consequences were severe. With one of the largest budgets of its era, the film needed extraordinary ticket sales to succeed. Instead, it became one of the decade's most famous financial disappointments. The Seventh Dawn, 1964. On the surface, The Seventh Dawn seemed like a safe investment. War drama, romance, political tension, all set against the backdrop of the Malayan emergency. It had scale, international appeal, and a story built around loyalty, betrayal, and survival. The film followed a British officer torn between duty and personal relationships as conflict intensified in Southeast Asia. The narrative attempted to balance action with emotional drama, weaving together war, friendship, and moral uncertainty. But the balance never fully worked. Audiences expecting a gripping war film found something slower and more restrained. Those looking for romance encountered a story overshadowed by political complexity. The film struggled to clearly define itself. Critics noted the uneven tone and lack of urgency. Nay, despite strong locations and a serious subject, the emotional impact often felt distant. At the box office, that distance mattered. Without a clear identity or strong word of mouth, The Seventh Dawn quietly faded. It wasn't the biggest disaster of the year, but it perfectly represented a costly mistake, a film with all the right elements that never came together. Hollywood in 1964 believed spectacle, stars, and massive budgets guaranteed success. These films proved otherwise. Behind the grand premieres were studios losing fortunes and careers quietly shaken by box office reality. And the lesson was brutal. Audiences decide everything. Because when viewers stop showing up, even the most magnificent productions can vanish, leaving behind nothing but empty theaters and expensive regrets.